Hey guys, on Sarcastic with the Hyperloops. So we're essentially looking at D-Day. It's release date for EAW. A lot of people went to midnight pre-releases, or some people even got access to their boxes early. Don't care how they got it. They got it. That's cool. So I haven't gotten my stuff yet. I gotta talk to one of the stores to see if I can actually pick it up today and if they got them in stock or what's going on. But so I guess what I wanted to talk about is some particular deck types that should be sprouting up soon. Everyone is pretty much already aware of Hera vehicles with Maz. Some guy on Discord called it Maserati like a couple weeks ago to a month ago, and I thought that was a cool name, Maserati. But so that'll be interesting to see where that ends up taking place. There's Rally Aid, which I think is a one-cost support. But what the hell is this guy doing? That's a one-cost support, and that you randomly reveal a card in your hand, and you can play it, and it'll cost one less. So it's kind of like a much better gambling. It binds all things. But if the card's a vehicle, you get to cast it for 2 less. And that is going to be very strong for the Hera deck, because then you can get things like a T-47 Airspeeder out for free, or essentially the cost of 1, but free. You'll get, I don't know how that works. I don't think that combos with Quad Jumper, because I have to go reread it actually. I can't recall if it said you play it right away, or if you play it, then it'll be it'll cost less. So we'll have to see how that actually goes. But it's very interesting because you can get like quads out for 1, T-47 Airspeeders for 0, and that's going to give the deck a lot more push, since you're not just 100% reliant on Hera. You can just kind of use her at the beginning and then just do whatever after. So we'll definitely see how that goes. The deck also running, is it weapons? Not weapons cache. My God, I'm sorry, I can't remember any of the names. I only read through the list once. It was the one that Team Covenant had showed before, where it was like, while you control this battlefield, the first vehicle you cast in a turn costs 1 less. So like combo that with any of the other cards, and you can get stuff much cheaper. So like quads for free. If you quad into like a 5-drop, it'll cost. You'd have to have quad out already. You'd have to get the field, which would be tough. But if you quad it into like a U-wing or something, then it would have cost you 1. So there'll definitely be some interesting things going on. Support decks in general activate pretty slow, and I think if you try to force them to activate faster, you're just putting bad cards in the deck. So I would probably advise against it. Any of the cards that get you additional activations are very good. Fixing stuff is very good. Yeah, like your hand is going to be very compact and tight. So you just kind of you want to make sure that you can make the maximum use of all your cards. But so we'll see how this ends up going with Hera vehicles. Thrawn Unkar, people aren't quite sure how they want to win yet. Whether they want to kind of go like the upgrades thing and then use the upgrades to like do AoE damage, or go Crime Lord, or do things like buyout and have it backed up by Crime Lord. But the deck's going to need a lot of removal just to deal with character dice, because as we've seen from my personal favorite decks at the time, the blue-red decks put out an astounding amount of damage, and they do it fast. I think there's a lot of merit in the whole blue lightsaber thing, or blue weapons. So I'm going to preface this by saying I don't think you should ever try to be mono blue. And the reason is just because you don't want to lose to Kylo. Like, I'd assume if you're playing blue hero, that if you're lucky, you can kill Kylo in round 2. But if they even make an attempt at trying to stop your damage, then you're going to have to do it round 3. And you can't let him just have 6 free damage like that. It would cripple you way too much. So I'm pretty sure no matter which version you're trying to go with the whole blue lightsaber thing, you're going to need to go 2-color to at least soften the amount of blue cards in the deck, because when you're doing the whole blue lightsaber thing, that's going to be a good chunk. So at least if you have access to the other events to help smooth out like removal and sustain, then you'll have something going that even if it's just 40% for them to miss, it's better than them almost being 100% at all times, because you can only have so many vibros and holdouts and confidences. They don't have access, Hero doesn't have access to doubt, so that'll be tough, but we'll see how that goes. There's also a couple cards I read in the set that I just don't think people know about yet, so I'm going to be experimenting very heavily with them, and then I will show them. I told them to the Mike and Nick, and it was kind of like, wait, what? And there's a minimum of one card that I think is absolutely amazing and could potentially put Hero on the map, but I could also see it just being eroded at some point due to intent. I think they just screwed up the wording, and in my mind, there's no way they can decide that the wording does something other than what it's written. I know, very cryptic, but there's no big events for EAW, so you guys will see it eventually once I figure out the list, but I feel like I may be onto something great. I don't know if it'll be at the level of Rainbow, just because I haven't found anything to abuse it with yet, but I'm currently going through theories. So definitely a lot of stuff. We already know about all the blue-red villain decks. I have to do an update for Rainbow. See if we change any of the other key cards in the deck. I don't really see myself changing most of the key cards. There weren't very efficient replacements. There were efficient replacements in the weapon slots, because now we have things like the sniper blaster, and we could probably just go entirely gun based if we want. It'll suck to go away from vibro knives, because the vibro knives make it so that all the dug-ins and force illusions are dead. So I may still have to budget those in, but I can make some possible adjustments to the weaker 3-drop weapon lineup to be more consistent, so that when we're getting thrawned and controlled out, we can at least maximize the efficiency with what's left. Also, at that point, if we're concerned with, there is another huge concern. Like, we're going back to the two-character like format, where Maz will have 3 characters, Rainbow will have 3 characters, but I see a lot of the other decks just running on 2. Thrawn Unkar, the blue-red like villain decks, all the Anakin Phasmas and Kylo FNs and stuff like that, and then like I'm pretty sure there's gonna be a lot of new hero decks where it's stuff like, you know, Ahsoka cannon or Ahsoka Rey and Qui-Gon cannons and stuff like that. So we'll kind of see how that ends up going. But there's a lot of interesting stuff, a lot of stuff to play test. The power level's missing on a lot of decks, but it doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that we don't currently know how to really use them. Because if you kind of think about it, FN didn't come out and just bust kneecaps. It took a lot of time and effort to be able to do that. But yeah, so look forward to a lot of good stuff coming out. This week, I put out, I think, a couple videos. I have a couple already uploaded. I just forgot to put the links. So when I get into work, I should be able to put those up. I would say it's nothing too awe-inspiring. For anyone that saw the Rainbow versus, I think it was Anakin Phasma match, I have it recorded from the other side as well, so you can see my hand. There's no additional like game analysis because we were talking at the same time, and I am not skilled enough to click on click to talk to you guys while him not hearing it on his side for the recording, and then go back into talking on the recording, because I mess that up frequently all the time when I get work calls, and that's why half of my stuff is not so amazing. I do have a video. Actually, no, I can't even show you guys this closer video. I'm working on a magnifying glass thing. I downloaded the new OBS. I've been, in general for my stuff, I've been running the archaic old one from like years ago. That just didn't auto-update into the new one. But the new one allows me to actually have access to the magnifying glass app on Windows. So I'm kind of, at this time, covering up my chat box with the magnifying glass. And it's letting me, it's showing whatever I go over with the mouse, it'll enlarge. So it'll be great from a standpoint of, as long as I go and I go anywhere near the dice, you guys will see the enlarged versions, because I'm terrible at alting them. So I can just try to make an active effort to like scan across the field every time dice roll out. But I try not to go near the dice when the opponent's rolling them, because there's a whole thing where it's kind of the etiquette. But, so there'll be lots of good stuff to come. We're going to be splitting up different types of archetypes, start pushing out the info. From my side, I touch a lot of decks, usually at the beginning, and I go like back and forth, so I don't expect anything super in-depth from me. There'll just be a lot of running in, like testing stuff, seeing if it has merit, kind of like putting it to the side, going to the next thing, coming back, because I feel like I learn a lot of stuff playing all of the different types of decks. Whereas if I had only played, let's say Rainbow for forever, I wouldn't learn like specific matchups or the feelings, as the people are playing that specific deck, and the kind of like minor weaknesses that people normally wouldn't be aware of. So like, let's say you played Rainbow, brand new, you're just new to Rainbow. You yourself are not super wary of the way you should be doing stuff. And like the weaknesses that the deck has, like you constantly feel like, man, I wish I had removed dice, but I can't, because I can't afford to have them decked, or I don't have the money available because I need to be able to, alright, well, I want to cast this rocket. To cast this rocket, I need to use this one that I have there. The opponent probably sees it and goes, crap, they might be able to flank my die if I try to set up anything super special. And maybe you have the flank also, but then you have to make hard decisions of, alright, well, do I take that, 4 damage, that 2 plus that 2 modifier, or do I flank the 2 and then give up entirely on being able to use this rocket launcher? Or if I do that, then I have to alright, well, I need to find an additional resource to use this rocket launcher, so what damage am I giving up? And it's small stuff like people wouldn't see or just don't understand or know about until you play the deck enough. So there's definitely a lot of situations like that. Vader and stuff like that definitely has to go through it, where when he's missing his friggin' damage sides on his dice, he's constantly discarding. Think of it from any of the holocron decks that you guys play. Like, how often are you sitting there looking at your hand and you're like, alright, well, I cast this upgrade, I cast the holocron, you're down to 4. I've cast a piece of removal because I have the resource available, I'm down to 3. You roll out your first character, it's kind of okay, but not amazing, so then you're like, alright, well, let me roll out my second character. Now you roll out the second guy, and the holocron misses. You do okay on damage, you're like, alright, well, this is fine. You pitch a card to reroll, and you miss on holocron again. Now, the thing is that you have a card in your hand that you either want to be able to cast later in this turn, like a Force Illusion or another piece of removal, or maybe go into next round with like a Z6. And the other card in your hand is like a Mind Probe. So now you have the tough decision, like, alright, well, if I have all damage on all my other dice, but holocron whiffed, do I pitch a Z6 for 33% to try to get in this Mind Probe? Or do I instead just give up on it for this round and then keep these 2 cards in hand, which are going to be very inefficient? Then you have like another decision of, alright, well, is this damage really high? Is my Anakin die showing a 1 ranged, and then like my Phasma die showing a focus, so that I could kind of like focus, or sorry, not a focus would be bad, they're like a resource, we'll make it a resource. Because then you're like, alright, well, I could grab a resource and do 1 damage, and then do this other damage, and then end my turn, Or I could just YOLO, then pitch the Z6, reroll Anakin's die, you know, the Phasma resource, and the Holocron, trying to hit Holocron again. But if you hit like discard with Anakin and hit Resourcer 1 or blank on Phasma, you're back in the same place, but you now got rid of the Z6. So there's just a lot of small stuff where people aren't aware. Like in Holocron decks, it's hand management's much tougher when they have just with that one force power, especially if your opponent has any sort of discard side showing, because then now, like, let's say you're playing against Night Sister has the discard side on the table, and like realistically you know they don't want to use it and they're probably not going to use it, but you can't go and pitch the Z6 for the reroll, because if they then do use it, you kind of just wasted everything you had. So like it's there's a lot of tough situations you run into it at playing as Rainbow all the time, where if your opponent has a discard showing and you would, let's say, have a Boundless and upgrade to cast on something like a Doubt, you kind of really want to doubt that discard side, because you're like, well, I don't care if you hit me for damage, like I need you to not discard my hand and either hit this weapon or this Boundless. But then if you doubt and then the discard comes back up, you're completely ruined, or potentially completely ruined, depending on what's going on. So there's just it's very important to play a bunch of different decks. I'm not saying to learn them 100% and get, you know, 200 games in with the deck and that you should play every deck for every tournament. You just kind of want to at least like touch up on it, play several games so you can get like a base understanding how it feels, especially once you have kind of your tournament deck locked in. You'd want to play the matches from the other side. If you can have, so let's say you have Maz Hera and you're testing against Vader. So like you may want to just try playing as the Vader side, so you can kind of see how it feels for them to be playing against your vehicle deck, because there could be situations where like you'll notice like, man, this feels terrible, or oh my god, I feel like this, you know, I feel like I crush Maz Hera because the discard just does so much. But you want to get a feel for it. Like there's a bunch of situations where you kind of want to think, all right, well, as the Maz Hera deck, I know I'm looking to do this. So maybe Vader does this to disrupt on my 2 resources and gives up on damage, just because there's a good chance I use these 2 resources to an extremely good effect. And it's sometimes it's stuff you don't really consider. There's a lot of times where like you'll have a disrupt on a Night Sister or a Flamethrower, and your opponent has, you know, the 1 resource, and you're just like, all right, well, I'm going to reroll this because I want damage. But you didn't take into consideration, like, oh wait, my opponent's Rainbow 9s. Like, if I take their last resource, they A, can't play Rocket Launcher because they can't pay for it. B, can't use Boundless Ambition on me. And C, like, if there's any flanks or any of their other 1-costing cards, like, they can't do it. So, like, take a lot of stuff into consideration. Play a lot of the other types of decks, especially versus your own decks once you have them locked in. And just try to kind of learn what it feels like to be on that side of the table. If you can learn that stuff, then you'll start being able to essentially mind scour the opponent. You'll see setups and plays where, oh, they're gonna do this because this would be the trick that would, you know, kind of mess me up. Like, just think how many times you may have played, you know, a hero deck that has DL44. So then all of a sudden your opponent, you know, gains a resource in like a weird spot, and you're down to like 2 dice. You know, maybe let's say let's say you're playing on Rebel War Room. You have a resource showing and a 3-for-1 showing, and you actually have the resource available. Efficiency wise, it dictates that you take your resource, get to 2, then claim Rebel War Room, assuming your opponent has enough moves left in their round for you to be able to do this. But if they're kind of forecasting that they have a DL44, then you may just immediately claim for the 3-for-1, or depending on what you're attempting to do, just activate the 3-for-1 and claim the Rebel War Room on the resource on the next round, or next turn. Sorry, I always get turn and round mixed up. My bad. So like, there's just lots of little small things you kind of want to become aware of, and playing a bunch of different decks will help from that. As long as you can keep stuff separated. For some, it's very tough to switch between decks because you kind of just get out of the mindset. And it's all about being very flexible. And if you play a bunch of decks, you can kind of like train yourself to be flexible from that standpoint and shift around, and like just to see different standpoints and point of views and different things that, like, oh, you know what, I really like the way this deck did X, but this other deck did Y amazingly well. Like, can I use these cards in this other deck as a form of synergy, and just, you know, move stuff around and different things. And like, sometimes you'll find like great decks, and sometimes you'll just find a pile of poop. It's life. But hopefully, you know, you guys do some good crack pulling from your PDUMP packs. I want to say it's Tylenol. I don't know if he pronounces it that way, but that man loves some Ancient Sabers. So look into it. Maybe you hate Ancient Lightsaber. Maybe you should consider picking a couple up. The ones that say stand out to me right now, though, are definitely the Lando pistol. I think it's like X8 sniper rifle. The Ancient Lightsaber could be very, very good, or it could just be average, but it's a 2-cost lightsaber, so it's kind of hard to complain. And if you use it, it can help protect stuff like FN and Kylo and make them really annoying. So there's definite merit there, and I would look into it. Thrawn, obviously, I don't particularly care about Mace. He does a lot of damage, but I don't know if that'll... He doesn't have a ton of health, and I don't know if that'll be enough for him. Because if he's playing against anything, he's gonna have to like bust through a whole lot, especially as a 3-die deck. So it'll be tough, because any of the removal is very detrimental to him. It immediately starts to reduce his damage very heavily. And Hero doesn't have great 0-cost removal, whereas Villain just gets Doubt, and he doesn't like you from yellow, and that quite often enough is enough to detriment the opponent while just kind of casting like upgrades, because you can just spend all your resources upgrading and still have some form of defense. Yeah, I don't remember enough of the EAW legends. Like, if you told me some of them, I'd be even confused, like, why there's legends. There's a lot of like questionable bad ones. I like the theory on Sabine. We'll see how that goes. I might even combo Sabine with a blue character instead of a red one, trying to make sure I can find the cards that I want, since you can technically find a lightsaber with her, and then equip the lightsaber if you got to pitch it beforehand. I don't think that makes any sort of sense for her from that standpoint, but there could be something there to do. So it'll be interesting, to say the least. But alright guys, on the Sarcastic reporting out, and hope you enjoy the video. Thanks. Deuces.